What's up, everybody? Episode 12, a dozen. Blue Truth with myself, Brian Attard, powered by the Sports Box. All New York Rangers all the time, because that's the only thing that matters. Welcome in. We are just less than 2 weeks away from the start of the season with a lot to talk about. Tom Scavetta, let's go Rangers. That's right, brother. My friends over at Review and Preview. So I guess we'll start off the show with the obviously the news of the week. Rangers announced Lundqvist Night is January 28th. That's when the Minnesota Wild and our old friend Mats Zuccarello return. And I guess the question really is this the last ceremony for a while? You know, I think it's very much the closing of the door on that 2010 Rangers era. You know, the 2011, 2012 through 2015, 2016, the run of relative success that they had. Obviously, they have nothing to show for it, but I think it is pretty telling, and I'd like to hear from you guys on this, that he's going to be the only one that gets his number put up. There's nobody else from that team. No Gaborik, no Nash, no McDonough, obviously. But he's the only one. And in many ways, he was the only thing that they had for all of those years. So it's very appropriate. I'll put it that way. And I also think that this is probably the last one of these for a while. You know, like I said, there's nobody coming from post 94 to Hank other than Hank. There's nobody that they drafted. There's nobody who was the impact that Hank was. And I think that you can see some of that in the pricing of the tickets. Because as soon as this got released, the Minnesota game on a random Friday in January blew up. And, you know, listen, it's New York, obviously. So that's going to happen. I mean, some of these prices, guys, are insane. Now, I was lucky. I was able to get a pair in 102 when the Rangers released some additional seats after the initial rush. Now, having said that, I still paid $700 a seat plus tip plus fees. So then it'll be like $1,500 for the two seats, which again, I understand is so it's a substantial for especially a regular season game. But I think when you compare that to what's being asked of tickets in the 400 level and tickets up top, and even other tickets in the lower level, you know, the tickets that I got were in 102, which is right behind his net, right behind where the banner should be. So I'm on a relative basis, I am content. But wow, I mean, it is no joke how much these tickets cost, but it is a special night, and there are some comments coming in. Mike Faree's correct, no one else, obviously. Brett Anderson, the only one who would come close in my eyes would be Girardi or Stahl, more so Girardi. That's tough, Brett. I mean, I know Girardi had an unceremonious end here. I don't hold that against him. I mean, he did fall off. I mean, I think if you think back to when the music kind of died with that group, it was when Stahl and Girardi got those deals, because it really hamstrung the team after that. So, is that Dan Girardi's fault? Absolutely not. You sign what's in front of you. That's a Glenn Sather issue. And, the fact that Hank never won a cup here, as I've said, is an indelible stain on this franchise forever, which is forever remembered by the fact that number 30 will hang from the rafters. And look, he deserves all of the accolades. I mean, he was the face of the franchise, and to his credit, he didn't want to leave when it was obvious that his time had come up, that he had the opportunity to go do something elsewhere. As competitive as a guy as you'll ever see. And they never won. And you think back to the 14 team and the 15 team. Again, in my commercial, I note that I bought my house the day that we closed on the house, the day of Game 7 against Tampa Bay. He was the reason they were there in many ways. I mean, really, where would those teams have been without him? So, it is an honor befitting him. Absolutely. And we knew by 2009 that they never would nobody would ever wear 30 ever again. So this is a surprise to no one. He deserves everything here. And I think that the way that it ended here with the buyout, which sucks, but what are you going to do? It's a business and it's a salary cap, that they wanted to rush to make it as right as they could. And they did that. I mean, nobody else has retired and gotten the jersey put up months later. But this is Henrik Lundqvist. We had a discussion a couple of weeks ago, when this was announced, trying to answer the unanswerable question of him or Richter. And we had a vibrant discussion about that. I don't think I swayed anybody one way or another, nor was I really trying to. I was pretty much just saying, you really can't answer this question. But I've seen Richter play. I saw Hank's entire career. This will be the first player that I was like alive and aware. I mean, I was born in 84, so my cognizance of the Rangers began in like 1990, 1991. So this will be the first player whose career I saw start to finish with this team where the banner goes up. And it's one of those things where, again, I'm very happy to be going. I told my wife this. This is like one of those things I think that if I don't go, I will regret on my deathbed whenever that is. Because that's how important this player was to the team that I love and adore. So the money was whatever. I'll make money. You got to live. But I will. It is very expensive. So I mean, I'll be there in 102. Whoever's there, it'll be great. I'll try to take pictures for everybody and post. I mean, I'm really looking forward to that. But I do think it's the last ceremony for a while. I know that there were some people saying, Savior said Ron Gresham should have his number 4 retired. I know Sean McCaff is a huge proponent of Frank Boucher and number 7. I don't know. I don't get the feeling that they want to necessarily go back into the history of the team now. I think that they've kind of exhausted that. When they did the goal a game line, when they did Gilbert and Rattel and Vic Hadfield, like that was kind of their way of fixing that. When they did Harry Howell and Andy Bathgate, that was their way of going. Like they have them in eras. Obviously Eddie. So he will be the only player from that era. From June 14th, 94 to current day, he is the only one that is worth hanging the number. Matt DeRosa says, you don't think Nash has a shot? He can make the Hall of Fame. I don't think Nash did enough in didn't anywhere close to enough in New York to warrant a jersey retirement. Yeah, it's an original 6 franchise. They don't give these away willy-nilly, nor should they, because it's not like football, like where they have those rings of honor, but the numbers can still be used by other players. In hockey, the number goes up and they never wear it again. And obviously, you're seeing players now wearing in the 70s and the 80s. We have quite a few in the Rangers. No, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that there's even a semblance of a discussion involving Rick Nash and his jersey retirement. But I'll always look back on that time period with regret because they should have won one. They really should have. They had every resource in the world, and they had an advantage over every other team because they had Henrik Lundqvist, who was the greatest goalie of his generation. And I'm not saying that because of the logo on my hat or what's on my shirt. He was the greatest goalie of his generation. The way that he dominated, I don't know if we'll see that again. In a period of the NHL where scoring was up, in a period of the NHL where you had, weird overtime and shootouts and all these gimmicky type of things, he dominated. So he deserves everything. And there's not going to be a dry eye in that house. Like, I just couldn't imagine being home for that. I have to be there for that. Like that is the capstone to an era of Ranger hockey. A successful era? No, I wouldn't say that. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, look what they have to show for it, because they have nothing to show for it. But to be fair, I can't recall a period of time in Ranger history where the window was that big. Like 92 was when Messier came. They were last place in 93. They won in 94. 95, they were the 8th seed. They beat Quebec. 96, they had, I guess, a little bit of a run. 97, yeah, I guess you can kind of say that 92 to 97. But I mean, the Rangers were legitimately a Stanley Cup contender from 2012 through 2016. So he's the face of it. I don't mean to repeat myself, but I think that it bears repeating. He is the reason they were where they were. It wasn't because they overpaid Brad Richards. It wasn't because they were bringing in, it wasn't because they had Gomez and Drury on the 07-08 team that ended up being second and third line centers because Yager couldn't play with either of them. It was him. And he absolutely, positively deserved this honor. Savior says Yager deserves it more than Nash. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be upset if Yager was retired league-wide. I really wouldn't. Mike Epstein, nobody else deserves it. Michael Faris. Marino is actually a phenomenal corollary to football because it's true. Like, he did everything for Miami and they just didn't win. At some point, like, I know that I'm a big winning matters, and it does. Oh, does it ever? It isn't his fault. If you think back to the Stanley Cup run in 2014, and you remember how that ended, he was just deflated. I mean, of course, he's the one that got them there. Think back to how good he was in Game 7s. Just wild how good he was. Like, we were so spoiled, and you don't know what you have until it's gone. So here's hoping that Igor, who we'll talk about later in the show, talking about this year's team, can hold a candle to him, because I don't think we realized in the moment what we were witnessing, and I think we look back on it now and say, yeah, we had a good one. Noah Deibler, my friend from the Sports Box. Noah, next Thursday night, we're talking about it. So, again, I hope to see as many of you there as I can. It's going to be, and you know what? The game, couldn't care less. I might leave at the end of the first period. I don't even care. It's a 2.5 hour one way for me, so I don't care. I am there to see that man get his place in the history of this franchise forever and ever, because he deserves it. We need Peter. We need more scoring, and Nash failed. I mean, if he played a little better, they might have a banner. Don't remember. To current day training camp, takeaways from the loss to the Islanders, the win over the Bruins. This fan base, oh my God, social media, they're losing to the Islanders and people are losing their minds. It's preseason. Nobody cares. play well. So it's fine. Lose. Doesn't matter. Irrelevant. News today was, so remember that game, Lafreniere was tried on the top line on the right wing with Zibanejad and Kreider. Already Gerard Gallant is saying that he didn't really feel comfortable doing that, which it is what it is. So they're going to try Kreider on the right side at some point. They might even try Kravtsov up there. I already don't like the way this is going, because when you saw Lafreniere go to the right and you saw that right wing depth chart, now you kind of thought, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to miss Buchnevich, but I kind of get it now because there really wasn't a place for him to play if this was your plan. Well, now that that plan has kind of gone by the wayside, that Lafreniere is not going to be the top line left wing, it begs a question where you're going to put these guys, because if Kreider stays at top, I don't think you can have Kreider as top wing left, because that's got to be Lafreniere's spot. So if Kreider doesn't work on the right, Kreider's dropping to the third line. And then if it's Kakko and Kravtsov, is it going to be Kravtsov up top? Because do you leave Kakko with Stroman Panarin? I'm fine with that. But then now you're trying to patchwork that third line. So do you take a Barclay Goodrow and put him on the right side instead of left? I'm not even sure if he can play right wing. Maybe he can. That'd be great. But I always kind of figured that third line was going to be some permutation of Hedl, Goodrow, and a right wing. Primarily Kravtsov was my thought. We'll see how that actually pans out. But already it's, it is what it is. But the line combinations, the D pairs are pretty much as you'd expect. We've known these defensive pairs for a while. It was always going to be Fox and Lindgren as they were last year. It was always going to be Trouba and K'Andre Miller. And now the third pair looks like it's Patrick Nemeth and Nils Lundqvist. And that's not to say that some of the kids haven't played well. They have. When you look at a guy like Braden Schneider, who I've said on this show all summer long, where is he going to play? If Braden Schneider is a left side defenseman, then someone's got to go at some point. And those someones would be Ryan Lindgren, K'Andre Miller, or now Patrick Nemeth. And maybe it's Nemeth. I don't know. Maybe he's only here for a year or two. When Schneider's ready to go, maybe Nemeth gets packaged out, which is fine. The more and more I think about this, the more and more I think a guy like K'Andre Miller might not be here long-term. And depending what Lindgren wants in his next deal, he might not be here long-term, because remember, they also have Robertson. They've been drafting this. Zach Jones. I haven't even mentioned Zach Jones, who played pro last year, probably ends up in Hartford to start, but he's been extremely noticeable when he's played. Brennan Othman, who's a left wing, very noticeable out there, didn't look out of place, and he went back to Flint. Of course he did. Where else was he going to go? The problem just remains, and it is a good problem to have. Do not get me wrong. I'm not complaining about this, but barring trades, there's just not spots for these guys. And I don't mean just now, because especially on the left side, if Lafreniere is not going to the right side and Kreider is not going to the right side, and Breadman's not going to the right side, that's your top 9 left wings. So there is no spot for Brennan Othman as a left wing on this team for at least 5 years, unless you move Kreider. Maybe you do, if you waive the no trade later on. So, again, love having the kids. I believe that we should honestly be prepared that they're all not going to play here, because it's just numbers. It's basic math, kids. And they're going to do their best to augment the team with more NHL ready type players that can play now, especially with that, the one spot they have, or they're going to have next year, maybe earlier, is Ryan Strome's spot at number 2 center. And there's nobody in the system to take it. So thumbs up, keep drafting defensemen, whatever. Broadcast can talk a lot about, there's youth, and look, they're absolutely marketing that as they are milking that, because they've never had that to milk. And Rangers fans bought into the letter. They bought into the rebuild. We did. We were all in on this. So they're, they're letting us know that, like, hey, look, there's this young player and that young player and this. Sure. Why wouldn't you? You've spent a good 4 to 5 years, cultivating that. So yeah, I understand why you'd want to market that. But again, while they were cultivating that, they were signing Panarin to a 7-year deal. I would do the same thing. not saying that was bad. A lot of things happen after the fact with draft picks, which were great. Not complaining about it. It is a good problem to have too much talent, because you can move the talent for other things. So, and who knows, with the salary cap the way it is, again, do we see a guy like a Kreider move? Do we see a guy like a Kreider Miller move? Because again, it is a numbers game. No doubt. Islanders fans are I hate them all. All 12 of them is right. Brett Anderson, hearing all this talk about how great the prospect pool is right now just makes me think back to the days we were putting all our eggs in this Sean Day. But he was not Brett. He was exceptional. Remember? He was like Connor McDavid, but on defense, and he fell to the third round. How lucky were we? Different times, guys. Different times. But yeah, I mean, look, the future is extremely bright, but I think that we need to not get emotionally attached to every single one of these kids, because we need to be adults and say, hey, numbers are numbers. They all can't play here. There are 12 forward spots, 6 defensemen, 2 goalies, and extras. You can't play them all. And I think to that effect, I think the Libor Hayek experiment and the Julian Gauthier experiment are done. They're arriving to their final conclusion, because I think they're going to get moved. They're going to get waived. I mean, Hayek was at the time was the key component to the McDonough-Miller deal. At least that's how we were sold it at the time. Thanks, Jeff. That has not materialized. So thankfully, Nils Lundqvist looks like he probably will. And then Julian Gauthier, I had to hear about Julian Gauthier. He could be like a middle 6 winger. Yeah, maybe, but not here. Not with this group. Not when you have Kaapo Kakko and Vitaly Kravtsov on your right wing. Is Julian Gauthier going to be a third line right wing? Probably not, if Barclay Goodrow's got to be there. So is he going to be on the fourth line? No, that's where Ryan Reeves is. Numbers. When you continue to add players this offseason to fill in these needs that you thought that you had, and you did. I mean, I get it. I'm not saying it was wrong, but Julian Gauthier is not going to be here. And we can cry. People that were crying about Colin Blackwell just don't understand third grade math that says I have 12 spots and he's not one of them. So it is what it is. Sammy Blais was extremely noticeable in the Boston game, 8-9 hits. I mean, that's what they brought him for. And then you start seeing some of the writers like, he could be a usable piece. Look, it isn't his fault that that's what the return was for Buchnevich. And I think that it's not fair to blame him like, you're what we got for Booch. It's your fault. Well, no, it's not. That's Chris Drury made that deal. And frankly, that's what the market was. So we can't even be upset about that. Like, if you don't think he tried to get more for him, I mean, it's a business, right? Peter Manassian, I guess, referring to Hayek and Gauthier, no big loss on both. No, I agree. Look, Joey Keane was a nice defensive prospect, which we have more than our fair share of. It was a very worthy gamble to take a guy like Gauthier. He was a first-round pick in 2016. Just never really got his shot under David Quinn. Fine. He hasn't earned it. So, it is what it is. You can't play them all. But Sammy Blais is going to make a nice bottom 6 piece. Again, I think we need to start remembering that part of moving Buchnevich, which I advocated in this offseason, so you can't sign the guy, trade him. Now, we can discuss and say their return was shit. I completely agree. I'm arguing that with nobody. But he had to go, because if you were moving Kakko up and Kravtsov up, or Lafreniere over, or Kreider over, again, you only have so many spots. You have to consolidate those spots into the guys that you want. And again, Kakko's making no money right now. Kravtsov's making no money right now. Rangers have cap space. Might that be Jack Eichel? Who knows? We'll find out. But they weren't ready to give $5.8 million to Pavel Buchnevich. And that's fine. It is. If you gave him the long-term deal, Kakko pans out, Kravtsov pans out, where are these players going to go? We're already talking about Chris Kreider making $6 million, $6.5 million on the third line left wing potentially. Where do you think Buchnevich would have gone? The third line right wing. Can you pay 2 guys on the wings of your third line $6 million a year on average? No, not in this league and not at this cap number. Matt DeRosa, I don't know why our system's so lopsided. Less D, more so. You and me both, brother. I think it's to them. Maybe they just had these guys rated higher. And if you again look when they got their ping pong balls, when they got up to the top of the draft, they were not in position to take a center. In Capo Caco's draft, look, the Devils made the pick for the Rangers. When the Devils took Jack Hughes, cool, we'll take Capo Caco. Had the Devils taken Caco, cool, we'll take Jack Hughes. Like that was the easiest pick in the entire draft. They couldn't get it wrong because it wasn't their decision to make, which is great because the Rangers love to get things wrong. In 2020 with Lafreniere, they were not going to take Byfield over Lafreniere. If they ended up with Byfield, sure, we're not mad about that. But you don't take a lesser player when there's somebody clearly better. And Lafreniere's ceiling is higher than Byfield's. And that's a universal belief. And here's the other thing, too. If you don't take Lafreniere there because you're the smartest guy in the room, and then he goes to LA and blows up, you're the idiot. You. So I had no problem with it. When they went, look, they tried their centers with Elias Anderson, who didn't work out, and Hedl, who still might, kid's still young. They tried it. They just were not in position. The picks that you can question about centers were Schneider for sure, because again, the defense was already heaping, but they just loved the kid. And Brennan Hoffman because centers went right after him. But again, you're talking about centers 3 years from now. So it doesn't help you right now either. But yeah, I mean, look, there's more preseason to come. You're going to see more guys, more and more get this cut down. Like we said last week, there just are not that many open spots on this team. We know who the roster is going to be. A lot of this is just theater. Let the kids get their shots. That's fine. Let them play a little bit. That's fine. Matt Rempe, probably not making the team. Not breaking news there. This is not high-level analysis. That there are only so many spots to work with. So we'll see where that goes. The captaincy. So obviously we're going to get a captain this year, and everybody I think seems to think that it's Chris Kreider or Jacob Trouba. In the chat, if you're live with us on Twitter or on Facebook, I think Twitter's having some problem with the comments, but if you're on the Facebook feed, feel free. If it's not Kreider or Trouba, who? I've heard Adam Fox's name. That would be a hell of a responsibility to put on that kid at this point in his career. I've heard Lafreniere's name. That would be a hell of a responsibility to put on this kid at this point in his career. So I don't think it goes that way. So I do think it's either Chris Kreider or Jacob Trouba. The ironic part of that is that those are the two names that everybody wants to get rid of because of their contracts. Everybody's like, we can't. Because Kreider, got to move him. Trouba's making all this money. I get it. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not. But one of them is probably going to be the captain. Robert Scatini, Sammy Blais. I don't know about all that. Both Brett Anderson and Mike Faris is saying, well, Chris Reisetter says Fox in a few years have Trouba hold it. Brett says Zibby. Mike Farisi says Zibby. Here's why it's not going to be Zibby, because Zibby hasn't signed an extension. And if you think that the New York Rangers are going to give that guy even more leverage than he already has by putting an original 6C on his sweater to possibly not even have it by the end of the season, don't think so. So had he signed a deal? Maybe. It's still open. If he signs the extension between now and the start of the season, we'll talk about it. But you don't put that on him before you have the certainty that he's going to be here at a price that you're comfortable with. Because don't think that his agent won't say, hey guys, there's your cap. You going to let him walk? We'll take $10 million a year. Thank you. In a bag, unmarked. You would do the same thing. Everybody gets mad at these players for taking all the money. The other side agrees to it. Okay. So, I can be mad that Mark Stahl was getting $5.8 a year for 5 years. I can be mad that Danny Girardi was getting $5.5 for 6 years. And I am, but I'm mad with the guy who offered the deal, not the guy who signed the deal. The guy who signed the deal simply said, sure, I will take your money. No, thank you. So, it's Kreider or Trouba, and I think that you find out what their commitment is. And this is the thing, right? We talk about this. They are the two most problematic contracts on the team. So, I talk to James all the time. So when we trade in Trouba, I said, he's got no movement clause, so we don't get that to make that decision. When we trade in Kreider, well, he's got no trade clause. We don't make that decision. If it were me, I think I would give it to Chris Kreider. But again, that creates problems down the road. When Callahan was traded, when McDonough was traded, that was an unceremonious way of removing your captain. They've done it before, so they'll do it again, but it isn't really ideal to be taking the leader of your team, by all intents and purposes, and trading him. So yeah, it is what it is. I do think it's one of those two. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. Panarin, I know no one's asking me about Panarin. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want it. And he even said, like, listen, in his own way, is like, you can leave without a letter. I don't even speak English. Like, I can't. It's not me. And I respect the hell out of that, because he could easily have asked for that with all that money he's making. Were they going to say no? But I respect the hell out of the idea that he didn't want it. Dennis says Lindgren. I don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, I understand why you say that, Dennis, and I'm not saying that you're wrong by any stretch, but no, I don't. He's still a kid. Brandon Anderson said correct. Mike Free said good point. I completely agree with you. Thank you. Noah said realistically, give it to Kreider without a second thought. And they may go that way. I mean, he's obviously going to win the Roger Albert Award this year, so it's nice from there. Matt DeRose, I wish we still had Pionk in the cap space. No offense to Trouba. So I'll agree with you on the cap space. As far as Neil Pionk, absolutely not. So Neil Pionk is an undersized right-handed offensive defenseman. We already have two of those in Adam Fox and Nils Lundqvist. We can't possibly have three. Neil Pionk had no place here. So I know that you look at the guy in a different uniform and a different set of surroundings and say, oh, he could have done that here. Well, probably not. There are guys who left here and didn't pan out. We all were so concerned, the angst in Ranger social media when Oscar Lindbergh was taken by the Golden Knights. You ever hear his name again? No. Is he still in the league? Where the hell's he at? Everybody's like, oh, we can't lose that guy. Jonathan Marchessault, people forget, came up in the Rangers system. He played here for a little bit. He was a nobody. Ended up in Vegas, 30-goal scorer. It is what it is. It just didn't work out here. I have no doubt in my mind Neil Pionk would never have worked out here. Not the way that he has. And the Rangers have him. It would just be duplicative. Robert, Kreider, perfect guy to carry the torch, pass it to a Laffy or a Fox. I can buy that. I can absolutely buy that. Diane Panarin wasn't even in the running. I agree. Thinks Kreider is the captain. Chris Reistetter, Trouba plays hard every game. Kreider disappears too much. I love Kreider. But Diane with a counterpoint to that is that the sea might actually light a fire under him. And maybe he won't be the streaky guy that we've seen. I mean, that's I think it was somebody on Twitter. I think it was Kels Rod, who's awesome. Follow as Kels Edward Kels Mads. Like, I'm still waiting for Kreider's breakout year, or maybe that was Diane. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. I think Diane might have said I'm still waiting for Kreider's breakout year, and he's like 29. So it is. Yeah, it's fine. Again, smart money says it's one of those two. We'll see where it ends up. So here's the $1 million question. I pulled this on the BlueTruth Twitter today, and I asked point blank, I said, are the New York Rangers a playoff team this year? And look, I mean, we're a biased group of people, right? 75% said yes, the Rangers are a playoff team. 25.2% said no. Some of the comments that I heard was not without Buchnevich. Is that a third? I would love to hear your comments. Obviously, I lost my screen. I'm noticing why I look different. There we go. I worked so hard on that. I want to make sure it shows. Anyway, I want to hear from you guys as to why or why not are the Rangers a playoff team? Because I'm here to tell you that the New York Rangers will make the playoffs this year. And I have felt for a very long time that this was the year that the rebuild would end. Because the bulk of Shattenkirk's buyout is gone. The bulk of Lundqvist's buyout is gone. Brendan Smith is gone. A lot of bad money is gone. And it might surprise you to know that the Rangers currently stand with more available cap space than the Seattle Kraken. That's a fact. Look it up. And although it's not the NFL and you can't take cap space year to year, they have $9.3 million in space. That's not an accident. I think they're keeping their options open for Jack Eichel. I remain of that mindset. Either way. I'm going to give you 5 reasons why I think that the Rangers are a playoff team. And again, I want to hear the comments from you guys to tell me if I'm right, if I'm wrong, if I've lost my mind, if I'm waving the pom-poms. I want you to tell me because I want to hear it. Number 1, a full training camp for the kids. As we mentioned last week, the Rangers made 8 first-round picks between 2017 and 2020. We are very likely to see 6 of them in the opening lineup, including everybody from 2018. Hedl, Kravtsov, you see K'Andre Miller right there. Nils Lundqvist is going to make his debut. Is my hard expectation will get that third right defense spot. Kakko, obviously going to be a fixture in your top 6. And obviously Lafreniere's got his own spot on this team. So that's what rebuilding is. And I can't remember a sustained period of commitment to youth and drafting in the history of this team. This is an immense amount of young talent that the Rangers have. And when I say a full training camp for the kids, you have to remember that Lafreniere had no camp last year. I mean, I remember that first game at home with nobody in the building. I mean, could you imagine? You've been preparing for this moment your entire life. Your draft is virtual in your house with your mom, your dad, and your sister. You get to your first NHL game, and you could hear a pin drop. What a just crazy set of circumstances for him for the start of his career. He gets a full training camp, a full preseason. Kakko, you have to remember, has not played a full year in the NHL yet. His rookie year got cut short, and his second year was the disaster of last year where the whole world was under what happened, right? That's reality. Kravtsov came over in the middle of last year. I think he had a little bit of training camp before, and then it didn't work out, went to Russia, and now he's back. K'Andre Miller, no training camp last year. Regardless of who the coach is, we'll get to that in a second. This is valuable for them. It's not as if you're it's like in the NFL, they have the preseason. They don't play the preseason. The first 2-3 weeks become preseason because these guys haven't played. So I don't expect Lafreniere to need the first 2 weeks of the year to warm up the way he did last year. I think he's getting that time right now. That's a huge reason. I expect a massive year from Lafreniere. I expect the 60-point player that I thought I was getting last year. And he's put some weight on. He's skating faster. I mean, I'm good. Love having him. So to me, that's a massive reason. Number 1, why the Rangers are a playoff team this year. Secondly, Gerard Gallant. Gerard Gallant is a better professional head coach than David Quinn. Everything that we have heard coming out of Rangerland, now that Quinn is gone, is that Quinn micromanaged. Quinn was very concerned what the players thought of him. You remember those press conferences where he's like, oh, we have the flu. All we don't want to do is pass it around. And he was basically trying to make his star players play differently. And they pretty much told him to take a hike. Go pound sand. We're going to do things our way. Gerard Gallant took an expansion team to the finals. Gerard Gallant took the Panthers to the playoffs. No one's done that since. I guess maybe last year. But the point was, Huberdeau and Barkov, young players at the time, love them. Players love Gerard Gallant. You hear some of the quotes coming out now about, from Strome today saying, the systems are a lot simpler. It's more go out and play, trust your instincts. You would have heard none of that when David Quinn was behind the bench of this team. And I said this before and I'll say it again. I don't think that there is a correlation between the dismissal of Jeff Gorton and John Davidson and the dismissal of David Quinn. I think that would have happened regardless. So And I was fine with that. He only had one more year on his deal, so whatever. Players want to go through a wall for this guy. So all this talk, too, about like, oh, the Rangers need to go out there and get grit, this, that, and the third. One of the things I said over the offseason, those of you who watch this show will remember, is I would like to see these players under a different head coach to see if they can do it. That maybe they have it in them, but Quinn wasn't getting it out of them. Again, Gerard Gallant was my guy the whole time. He was the guy I wanted from the jump. He is the perfect fit for this team, and I think he's going to do wonders with them. So, number 2, Gerard Gallant is a better professional head coach than David Quinn. Number 3, a full year of Igor Schisturken. And I know that Noah saw that. I saw the comment. I did read it there. I did not ignore you. When he came in 2 years ago, he went 10-2, got into a car accident. He's got his deal now. I think Shesterkin's a top 10 goalie in the league, and I think I'm being generous. I think he's probably more than that. The talent is undeniable. He was an absolute stud in the KHL. Stud! And he can do that here. We've seen him do that. With a full off season and a full training camp. I don't lump him in with the kids. He's 26. 25, 26, whatever. I'm close enough. I expect him to have a great season. He got his money. He's got the job. The defense in front of him is better. Older, more mature, more experienced. He's going to have a big year. So his presence alone is a massive plus. Now, don't get hurt. Again, there's been some people who say, hey, the guy's gotten hurt a couple times. I'm not saying those people are wrong. I mean, that's fair, but from a talent perspective, this is his net. It's his job. Nobody's behind him. Georgiev's got 12 months here and he's gone because that contract's up. Probably might be getting traded before that. So I am excited to see this guy in a full 82. Which brings me to reason number 4. It's a full 82, and it's against the entire league, not 56 games, interdivision. So much was made last year of this, oh, they get pushed around, they get this, they get that. Okay. Well, last year was 56 games against the Islanders and the Bruins and the Penguins and the Capitals and the Flyers and the Devils and Island and Sabres stink, whatever. But it was the buzzsaw that was that division. We're not going to have that anymore. So every game is not going in those 2-game sets and everything else. I think a lot of those things worked against a more finesse team. The fact is, you're not going to have the physical play that you get against the Islanders and the Capitals and the Penguins and the Devils and the Flyers who hate you when you're playing the Sharks and the Ducks and the Predators and the Stars and teams that don't really care. They're playing, it's a regular season hockey game. So I think that helps them quite a bit. It will make it easier on them because you can say, hey, they're not built, or maybe they weren't built at the time and now they've gotten grittier for sure. Maybe a year too late. But I think the fact that it's a normal year helps the Rangers tremendously. And let's not forget, the Garden's going to be packed all year. And that matters. Don't think it doesn't matter. Okay, look, this is all. I remember playing hockey as a kid. Like, it matters when people are there. You get juiced for it. The players will tell you that. So, it's pro hockey. Don't get me wrong. I am in no way, shape, or form comparing what I did as a kid to what these people do now. But it matters when people are there. That's why the playoffs are so great. That's why the playoffs were so great, even though we weren't in it. So that's reason number 4. Fifth and final. With everything that went wrong the last 2 years, the Rangers were on the doorstep of getting in. Do we really believe that this team is not better than those teams? Do we really believe that when you look at this group now and you remember Quinn and his inability to coach his professional players. You remember the car accident that Igor and Buchnevich got in 2 years ago. You remember the Tony DeAngelo situation. I'm not going to litigate it, but it happened. We know that it did. That was a distraction. Panarin and the whole politics thing with Russia, this, that, and the third. The whole Tom Wilson thing. Like, could anything have not have gone wrong last year? And think about what that, with Lafreniere's first year in the league and Miller's first year and Kakko's second year, like literally every single thing was like, there was no just breathing and play hockey. Everything else was going on. Like, do we really honestly think that this group right now, you can make the case they're going to miss Buchnevich. I'm not going to disagree with you, but I think they're positioned to be okay. Because I'm expecting next steps from Lafreniere and Kakko and Kravtsov and Hedl for that matter. And the guys on defense. They're set up. This is a playoff team. And I think if it's not a playoff team, then I think it's a problem. I am not sitting here and telling you that the New York Rangers are going to win the Stanley Cup. I'm not going to sit here and say that, okay? Would I love it to happen? Sure. I mean, obviously, right? But realistically, the next step, the next iteration is you have to make the playoffs now. As big as a guy as I am about if you're not going to win, lose, and listen, I get blitzed all the time about this. I keep saying, look, in the NFL, you're not going to win, lose games, go get high draft picks. We ended up with Kaapo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere. And if you tell me, well, we lost a bunch of games, who gives a shit now? Look at what you ended up with. Look at where you are. You are where you are because you committed to doing the right thing. You did the right thing. You went into rebuild and you rebuilt. Remember, 6 first-round picks from your last 5 drafts will be in that lineup against the Washington Capitals. You did what you went out to do. Now it's time to see it in action. No one's going to convince me that this team is not better than last year and better than 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, when Igor was 10-2, they were the talk of the league. They were going to sneak in. They were going to overtake the Islanders and whoever else was there. And they were going to sneak into the playoffs 2 years ago. That was Panarin's first year and Trouba's first year and Kakko's first year. And everybody was like, oh, look at what the Rangers did. And Adam Fox's first year. And then last year, if things don't fall off at the end of the year, if Trouba doesn't get hurt, if Panarin doesn't miss time last year, if we don't have to go through the start of the season with this whole Tony DeAngelo episode, they probably get in. And then I got Islanders saying, well, the Islanders. Let's just remember here, the Islanders barely got in 2 years ago, and they barely got in last year. Hot take, they don't get in this year. Tune in next week for the Sportsbox NHL Season Preview, where I go over everything with the boys and the whole group. But convince me. Tell me I'm wrong. If you don't think they make the playoffs, tell me why. You look at the rest of this division, and I want you to tell me what teams scare you. Because the only team that I say, you know what, they are better than us is Carolina. I love Carolina. Except for the goaltending. I'll give you that. The Penguins are old. Their time has passed. They have been trying to patchwork this thing for years. And I would do the same thing they did, right? I'm not saying they're doing it wrong. When you have Crosby and Malkin, you do that. But that we've seen them now be god-awful in the playoffs. I expect that to continue. The Capitals, this is just a countdown to Ovi to breaking the record. They're not as good anymore. Trounced last year in the playoffs. They're not the same team. They're just not. The Flyers stink. We know who the Flyers are. We know their head coach. And we know that their head coach doesn't win if he doesn't have all-world goaltending. He ain't got it. Write them off. The Islanders? Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. I still say it's smoke and mirrors. I've said it's smoke and mirrors for 2 years, and last year took time off the end of my life having to live through that conference final because God forbid they got past that game. They probably win the whole damn thing, and unacceptable. But they don't score goals. And the way that the season was last year, like, I think it kind of played into they love that muck and grind, like, physicality type stuff. Probably should have lost to Pittsburgh in the first round. Probably should have lost to Boston in the second round. I understand it didn't happen. I don't want to appear that this is like sour grapes here. I watched those games. I have no idea how the Islanders won. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't think they make the playoffs. The only team that scares me is Carolina. Devils stink. Columbus stinks. Who scares you? I was going to take a screenshot, and I forgot to, but I'm going to go look up the Draftkings odds on the division. And I'm going to take some screenshots, and I'm going to post them. So here we are. Odds on the Stanley Cup winner, odds on winning the conference, odds on winning the division, which will be eye-opening to some of you, I think, when I post this, for those of you who don't know. And odds on making the playoffs. I apologize for my lack of preparation in this. I meant to do it earlier, and I didn't. So I will now send these, airdrop them to the Mac. I will upload them, and we will talk about it. Because I think that, again, I'm not sitting here saying gambling odds tell you everything, but they do tell you something. They tell you what people think. They tell you what people in the know, whose pure job it is to save people a lot of money. We'll start with number one. Let me get this banner out of here so you can see this in full once it loads. Okay. These are the odds on winning the Stanley Cup. Right now, your New York Rangers have the 9th best odds in the entire NHL of winning the whole goddamn thing at 22-1. They're not great odds, right? They're better than Pittsburgh's. They're better than Carolina's. And I think Carolina's better than us, personally. So there seems to be some faith in the business community. Winning the Eastern Conference. Your New York Rangers have the 6th best odds to win the Eastern Conference, ahead of Carolina, ahead of Pittsburgh, ahead of Washington, ahead of the Flyers, ahead of all these other teams in our division. Okay. This one might surprise you. Odds to win the division. Guess who the second team is behind those schmucks from Long Island? It's us. It's us. Better odds than Carolina. Better odds than Pittsburgh. Look where Washington is. Look where the Flyers are. And last but certainly not least, the New York Rangers are minus money to make the playoffs. This, for those of you who are not degenerates like me, you have to lay $190 to win $100 on the Rangers getting in. Vegas thinks they're getting in. And I am inclined to agree with them. Comments. I did miss quite a few of these. Robert said, I was joking about Sammy Blais for center, but goodness, does he make all the difference in the world? Skill and talent. Now they have the balls and grit. They're a complete team, a playoff team, deep lineup. I can't dispute that. No, that reason number 4, Pittsburgh's 2 best players setting up 401ks. Well, Matt DeRosa, we lost a bunch of 1-goal games last year under Quinn. I agree. Gallant's going to drag the team over the line. Yep. Mike Epstein, reason for is eye-opening. I never thought of it that way. Format didn't work for finesse team, 100% accurate. Mike, I think I'm right about that. I really do. I think that when you have to keep playing the same teams over and over again, it becomes pseudo-playoff hockey. And, like, if you're not built for that specifically, it hurts you. So, you know. Brett says, if you're going to be bad, be really bad. Just don't let it become a habit. No, you're right. But be bad when you're supposed to. If you have no shot of contention, it doesn't help you to get in. It's cosmetic. Too many teams make the playoffs anyway in the NHL. Mike Epstein, they will make the playoffs. That's what I want to hear. It's what I want to hear. Noah will be on the show with us next week. Again, we'll talk about that just in a moment or two. Matt says, every year I say the Peds are old and done. I'm wrong every year. Are you, though? when was the last time they won a playoff series, Matt? Because the last thing I remember the Penguins doing is costing me money 3 straight years, getting swept by the Islanders, losing to Montreal, the 12 seed in an expanded playoff tournament, and getting ousted last year by the Islanders again. You're not wrong. You're right. They find a way to get in, and then when they get in, they shit the bed. They are done. They'll get in the playoffs again and lose, maybe to us. Robert Scatini, biggest reason we missed it last year was the COVID start. I didn't even mention that. Thank you. Zibby off to a horrible start. Think of everything that went wrong last year. That's not going to happen this year. You have to just embrace it. Like, they're a playoff team. They are a playoff team. And I'll tell you something else. I'm going to say that they're not a wild card team. They are the 2 or the 3 in this division, and they might win the damn division. They might. I'm not calling for it, but they can. They are good enough to do that. I pride myself on not waving the pom-poms. Like, this is what I look. Call them the Kansas City Marauders and just look at the players on the team. Like, do you not look at the group of players as they are and see a playoff team in that roster? Because I do. It's not because I love that team, and Lord knows that I do. It's because of the players that are there. It's because of the building that they've done. Brett Anderson again. Yep. Svechnikov and Aho are legit. Love them. They long term, Brett. That's the biggest threat in this division is them to us, but they have no money and they're managed by an idiot, which is why that's their biggest problem. They don't want to pay anybody, and they don't want a goaltender. Mike Faris, no question we make the playoffs. Chris Reistatter, as long as they play their capabilities, nothing out of this world, they make the playoffs. Yeah. So then the question is, how far can they go? So again, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're going to win the whole thing. Not saying that. What I am saying is this is the year they go from outside of playoffs to in. Next year, launchpad. Pending the salary cap, pending everything else. Next year is when the rocket ship takes off, but this year is a transition into the playoffs. And given the format, if they end up in the top 3 in the division, I don't see a reason why, not that they will, but that they can't get to the 3rd round. Because I think that they can beat any team in this division in a 7-game series. Now, when you get into the other side and you got to play a Tampa or a Boston or maybe Toronto, who can't get out of their own way, those are better teams than you. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not. So I think it would be asking a lot to get out of the conference, given how deep that other division is, how good Tampa still is, how good Boston still is, and Toronto maybe one day will figure it out. Very talented team. But when you're telling me that you're in a playoff quadrant with, the Caps or the Penguins, and the Rangers can beat those teams. I'm not saying they will. I'm saying they can. So how far can they go? They can go to the conference finals if things really break well further than that. I don't think they're going to break for them, but I think that's where they can go. Where are they likely to go? I think if you win a round this year, I think you got to be pretty happy about that. On a relative basis, we don't celebrate losing. What I'm saying is that you're seeing the growth. So you're not going to be like, whatever. You will not be mad if they win a round in the playoffs. You will be mad if they don't get in. If they get in and lose in the first round, you are somewhat disappointed, but you're okay. They win a round, lose second round, you are not even upset. I'm telling you right now, this is on forever video. I will not be upset. Because that's my expectation. I look at them as unbiasedly as I can, and I say, where do I think they can go? And that's where I think they can go. They're not in the upper echelon yet. They're not going to be the Tampa in a playoff series. They're not going to be the Boston in a playoff series. But they can get to that point. And then things go crazy. You don't know. But I don't think that I don't think that they're there yet. Mike Epstein, team can go to the conference final as long as they're healthy. I agree. No, the Ibler second round is very possible. Chris Reiser, anything can happen. Look at the Habs. Yeah, but don't fall into that trap, Chris, because I hear you on that, but that was like one of those things where like it never should have happened. Like if Toronto just does their job, Montreal's out in the first round, as they should be. Then they went up against Winnipeg, who wasn't very good, and just happened to go over a very soft Edmonton team. And then Vegas blew their load getting past Colorado. So what happened to Vegas is what happened to Winnipeg the year Vegas went to the finals. Is they blew their chances. They blew everything they had getting there. So, Matt, history says you have to lose in the playoffs before you win there. I hear you on that. I'm not a huge believer in that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's a must, but again, to be fair, Matt, Vegas went to the finals their first year. So, I've seen crazy stuff. Dennis Freeman, anything can happen in the playoffs. Grit plays. Peters, I've been saying this all offseason, and now Kakko and Laffy step up to the plate, bring their game to another level. We could do major damage in the playoffs. They're built that way. Who stops his power play? Ton of skill. They still have the skill. Like, I know that there are people that are upset that Buchnevich is gone. I'm not diminishing that, but I'm just saying, like, again, numbers game. These guys all can't play. Would you rather not have Vitaly Kravtsov? Like, who would you rather have, Kravtsov or Buchnevich? Seriously. Because Buchnevich is making $6 million and Kravtsov's not making $1 million. It's all relative. Xavier gives me a 6-3s and they're a proper fourth line, adds grit and toughness, lets our skill players play without fear. I get it. Hopefully they're not just getting in fights all the time. Robert says, if Rangers and Islanders are 1-2, biggest rivalry in all sports, reignited. All it takes is one nasty playoff series. And listen, now, caveat, if they lose to the Islanders in the second round, you're not going to be happy about that. You'll be a little mad, but it's okay. Because you see, it's like a stock chart, angled up. They've been on the upswing now for a couple of years. This is the year they take that step and make the playoffs. No, agreed, second or third round. So, if it's one thought that I can leave you with for this week. Now, again, next week, the Sportsbox Network is doing our NHL season preview. Keep your eyes out for that. I'm thinking it's probably going to be 8:30. I'll have to talk to the boys and see what they can do, but I'll try to simulcast it to the BlueTruth page. If not, again, at Sportsbox Show, follow the network of what we have. We'll be doing it there, trying to go through every division and team and kind of seeing, what we think is going to happen. Have a bunch of the guys on that. But again, just watch preseason. Just watch the line combinations. Watch what they put together because it really just clues you in as to what they think. Like they'll put together a D pair of kids. Like, what are you doing there? That's probably Hartford. But they want to see if they can play. They try different things now because they can. It's going to be those last couple games, maybe the last one or two, where you will see what the lineup's going to look like. And we talked about it last week. I think we all know we have a very good working idea, especially the people that watch this show in this group, because you're all smart people, of what this is going to look like. We know. And that's why, and let's not forget this, is the consistency, even though the coaching is different, these guys have played together. And you've had a year of that. Like people just don't realize like how weird it must have been for these guys the last 2 years. Like that's finally back to as normal as we've had it. Full house. People are going to be there. Everybody's excited. I think the Rangers are primed to make the playoffs. I will be surprised if they don't. I would have been surprised the last 2 years if they did. I would be now surprised if they don't. Dennis Primo. We've seen Bush's ceiling, crossovers a much higher ceiling. I agree. 9th overall pick. So, what I will ask you as we wrap up is I'm a big proponent of trying to break the Facebook algorithm. So all of you that are watching, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I love doing this. We've been on for about a little over an hour. It has flown. I always worry every week that I don't have enough to talk about to fill an hour. And then we go over, right? So, say a little bit. Anyway, the more likes you have, the more Facebook shows it out there. So if you give us a like on the show, thank you very much. I appreciate that. If you'd like to share the show, that would be awesome too. The BlueTruth page, like that. We're over 500 followers now, which is awesome. Appreciate that. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, obviously follow the other one. If you're watching on the YouTube replay, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Like us here on the Facebook page. We're always live on Facebook and Twitter. I usually upload it to YouTube, the next day, but it's there. This is fun, guys. And this is going to be a fun season. And we're going to get together pretty often, talk about what's good, talk about what's not. But I think that at the end, come mid-April, we're talking about a playoff series at the Garden. That's my God's honest truth. This is not me doing this. I hate doing this because I think that's people do that, and I'm not built that way. And I feel it. I feel it with this team. The difference in the player interview alone shows us the team's excited and are bought in. They love the coach. Look, the coach is the guy. Again, catch us next week. We'll be doing the NHL season preview live on Thursday, October the 7th. On behalf of me, myself, and I, BlueTruth, Rangers Talk with Brian Attard, thank you so very much for your time tonight. Thanks for the interaction. This is an absolute blast, and we'll see you next week for the preview. Let's go, Rangers.